Welcome back. This is the Curly Hair Mafia. As always, we are your hosts. I am Adverbia.
Dr. Ovidium.
And Dr. Danielle Lee, DN Lee.
So tonight we are reviewing season 1 of The Witcher, and we're going to tackle the first 4 episodes. The Witcher was a 2019 series that aired on Netflix and is based on a book of the same title by Andrzej Sapkowski. And the 4 episodes that we're going to talk about tonight are The Ends Beginnings, 4 Marks, Betrayer Moon, and Of Banquets, Bastards, and Burials. So if you haven't seen it, there will be lots of spoilers. Press pause, go watch 4 hours of television, and come on back. So there's a lot going on in this series. I was not familiar with this vehicle at all. Interestingly, when I was scanning the Wikipedia page, it doesn't mention the game. Are either of you guys familiar with the game?
Yes, that's where I know Witcher from.
Okay, so give us the deets on the game, because I know nothing about it. I've never played it.
It's another fantasy game. I mean, I can't tell you where we are in the gaming world. Like it's based on that. There are a lot of the same characters, which of course made some folks mad because they didn't cast them to look like the game designer, or whatever. But there is a lot of the same elements, but they are definitely going in some plot point directions, maybe that are a little bit different, again, some different casting changes. So I haven't played the game in forever.
Yeah. So it was interesting that in the week that The Witcher premiered on Netflix, The Witcher 3 had the highest sales that it had ever had since the game had premiered. So,
nice.
So the show definitely turned people back onto the game, and they went rushing out to buy it. So that was great. So the show follows Geralt of Rivia and Ciri, who is a princess, and their fates are intertwined. And it really isn't until episode 4 that we start to get an understanding of what that really means.
Yes.
So let's jump into episode 1, and we're gonna have to move through these pretty quickly because there's a lot going on.
So much is going on.
So in the cold open, we get a big dose of action right away, right? Yeah. Geralt kills this like spiderling thing, and it's the effects are a little touch and go, but it really gives us some insight into his character, especially considering how that scene ends. Not only does he kill this thing, which is obviously a monster, but he also kills this beautiful fawn that was injured by the monster. So, what were your first impressions of Geralt?
My first impressions were I thought he was wearing linebacker gear. I was like, is that the costuming? They just put him in a football uniform. But actually, the cold opening scene, I thought I could be watching Willow or The Huntsman.
Yeah.
Or even Legend.
Any of those.
Or even Legend. I was like, Willow, is that you?
Beastmaster? No, he didn't. He had way too many clothes on for that old school Beastmaster.
Yeah.
I think my first.
Go ahead, Ray.
Oh, so my first impression is, you see this action, whatever, but the minute he opened his mouth, I was like, oh, so we're going with the husky, I am Geralt of Rivia. I'm thinking vocal fry. Like, you're speaking the whole fucking series like that, of like brooding. My first mind is like, okay, how like there's Broadchurch and there's like all these brooding detectives in the moors or like in Wales and Scotland and some shit, and they've just like downtrodden and brooding all the time. I'm like, oh, so we're going with that. Right? Like, and then I'm like, this is not his voice. So he's dropped down and then he's doing that whole and I'm like, okay, so I see where this is going. But yeah, there was a lot of like the broodiness, but then there was a little humor in it, right? And a little bit of the fun had to go, right? Like, but had to go. Sorry, fun. Like, it's like Bambi. You're like,
in the arms of the angel.
So I agree that right away you get a very Batman feel from Geralt, right? He's sort of dark, he's stoic, right? He is the night, he is the darkness, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the very next scene, after the open, he goes to a tavern and he meets a woman who it turns out is Renfri, is the woman that he is actually contracted eventually to kill. But that interaction tells us a lot too, the way he's treated in the tavern. This is something in the show over the course of the first 4 episodes that seems very inconsistent to me. He's a witcher. He's a witcher. He has extraordinary powers. He is genetically altered. People hire him specifically to deal with the monsters that they can't deal with, and everybody treats him like shit. Everybody steps to him, from like the littlest kid in the village to the drunkest old man. Everybody gets in his face and steps to him, and then they're going to turn around and be like, "Yeah, go kill this monster." I don't understand it. I don't understand it at all. It doesn't that doesn't make any sense to me.
You know what? I think I figured it out. He's the Riddleman. What was that book we all had to read in high school? I'm gonna have to look it up. Like, he's the loner that no one likes, but then they still depend on him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but at least I would think at least people would be fearful of him.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though, is they're trying to set up they have all these different not quite a caste system, but right, there's definitely marginalized communities, and they're not the ones we think they are, right? They set it up in this kind of fantasy realm, which I have to say, like, right away I saw more Black people than in all seasons of Game of Thrones.
Yes.
In like one episode. I was like, what the hell's going on? So their marginalized groups are completely different, right? They're elves. You're like, oh my God, this is like crazy. The elves are like, and then, they're the Witcher. And then, of course, there's like the other group that you see that as we move on is you see the same thing with the mages. They like, this is also a cornerstone of their society that they actually treat like shit, right? These are all powerful beings. Like, could snap your fingers and like send you into some fucking portal and you never be seen again, or send some kind of like magical assassin for you. But they also treat them like chattel. And in some ways, like, we've seen that in our real world, right? Where you have these groups that are basically the bedrock of the economy, and they treat them like shit.
Yep.
Right. So that I didn't find confusing, because we have that in real life. What I found confusing is the fact that you also have communities that buy into the system. Nobody is like doing a mass revolt and being like, I will fucking smoke you where you stand, right? Which he could certainly do. Like, he easily, right, take out 12 people and not break a sweat. Right. So why is he not doing that? Well, I mean, again, I say the same thing of, we could ask that about a lot of people. Why don't they leave? Why don't they revolt? Like, I didn't have that big of a problem with that, because I'm like, that's part of the conceit of the show, but also we've kind of seen that in real life.
Yeah, but in real life, the power lies in the collective action. Right? Like if this group of people all went on strike, right, they would have a lot of leverage, but it relies on that collective action. His power is singular within himself.
Yeah.
Right? He
but
all by himself is a badass.
I mean, he will take out some people, but it's still limited. They'll still send people after him. Like, how much free will does a person really have? How much power does he really have? I mean, it's really going to be put to the test. You can already see that, right, happening. And also the power of his own mind. How many times are you like, did he just walk away? He just walked away. Why did he walk away? Yeah. Like, that's part of but I also think, in a way it reminds me of, like, why isn't that pet mauling your fucking face, right? Like,
that's true. No, that's true.
That's a good point.
That's true. I have large animals.
Like, there's the training of, like, what is this weird relationship, this weird because if he did that, he still depends, like, there's still this capitalism trash in this fantasy world where he's like, I need my coin.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So, like, I was
and it's true. He has no community. That's right. He really is all by himself. He's
all by himself.
To fall back on.
Like you, Lolly, like, I thought Winfrey was going to be, so it's hinting into the other episodes, so far she's not in any of the subsequent episodes, even though she's mentioned, but she comes off as so important. And so I just felt like, what's her purpose? They set me up and then she falls apart. And she says a really important line, which I was like, I'm gonna write it down because I think it's gonna matter. But she says, they created me just as they created you. Winfrey says that to Gerald at some point, where, you know, what she's basically like, what happens in these fantasy novels is they fight sex, you know. It's like, do we fight or which one do we do? Let's do
both. We do both.
Right.
Clearly. I think her point, though, I mean, how many times have we seen that as a trope across multiple genres where there is a woman or a love interest? A lot of times for the male protagonist, it is a woman that is. James Bond is a perfect example. How many times are they going to roll out the trope of the woman he loves betrays him, and that's the reason why he is the way he is? But she's complicated. She's being blackmailed. It's not her fault. Like, Jesus Christ, like the damaged princess, he rescues her.
Yeah.
But that ends up biting him in the ass. They don't stay together, and it's the whole motivation for like Batman, for James Bond. I'm just like, yep, this is going to be this person's, that's her role, is that she's the voice now that camps out as this person, this supposedly transitory relationship that has a deep, you know, connection into his psyche. And
that's a good point.
Her. Right?
The impactful transitory relationship.
Yeah, she's the one that says things that he already knew, but is like the external person that says these things, right?
Yeah.
And he's a human monster. She's the first human monster he's killed. And he's also the first person that's not really a monster, or a monster not of her own design. Yeah. Like, so that's, you know, it's that whole, but she's a vehicle for his own awakening. And and that's her whole point.
She's the voice in his head, which is important, especially if we want to get ready for the next episode. The episode ends with her telling him, your fate is tied to the girl.
Right. So, and then that brings up the issue of the timeline, right? So already in this episode, we're seeing two, and it really isn't clear in this episode that we're seeing two different timelines, but we are. Yeah. So I get the feeling that Renfrey is far in his past.
Yes.
So that's the impression that I get, that he meets Renfrey way in the past, that Cirilla hasn't been born yet. So whenever we see the Princess Cirilla, that's the present day.
Yes. But I don't know how far back she is. And that's what's, so I had to watch it twice because it confused me so. Because unlike, I've been prepared all these years, I need a blurry background or something to let me know it's the past. They're playing both of these like they're current. I think I watched the whole series. I think I was on episode 7 when I was like, wait, what? Are these two different times?
But I think that this is another time where it's another male character, where it's a woman in his past that he could not save. How many times have we seen that he lost or couldn't save? Even Lethal Weapon, the movie series, right? Like, there's a woman in his past he couldn't save, but he'll be damned if he doesn't save the next one. And you're like, and that's when your judgment goes to shit, because he's about to do all this crazy shit because he's dealing with this baggage, but above the 2 checked bag allowance.
You know what? In the wise words, you know what? In the wise words of the rapper Prophet E40, you can't save her. Don't save her. Don't save her. Can't save her. Stop it. I want to be
Captain
saved.
Save a hoe. You can't. The hoe will save
Cannot.
herself.
That's right.
Can't save her.
That's right. So one more character before we wrap up this episode, Stregobor. We get introduced to Stregobor, who is a sorcerer, who is the one who hires Geralt to kill Renfrey.
Shady motherfucker.
Yes, he is the one that's holed up in the tower with all of the naked girls.
Naked imaginary girls. They're not even real, are they?
It's hard to tell. Are they? But would they even be real if they were real? I don't know. Like,
but they were all white, I think. I was like, that's a lot of naked
and they just just picking fruit. It's 3 oranges on that tree, and that girl was picking that fruit for half an hour.
It was like Vanna White, but nude. It was like,
yeah, listen, the man likes what he likes. I mean, what do you? So this is a character that's going to come up again and again as a major character, Stregobor. In the meantime, in the present day, Nilfgaard, which is some kingdom that we know nothing about, begins to wage war on Cintra. And the queen of Cintra is Cirilla's grandmother, Malsac. Calanth. That's right. Calanth is Cirilla's grandmother. Malsac is a sorcerer who works for Calanth.
Yeah.
And Calanth's husband is kind of a creeper, like a weirdo.
He's weird, but so Queen Calanth is obviously my favorite character.
Me too. That's a bitch.
I was just like, is this happening? The queen is for real badass. Like I'm going to battle. I don't know what y'all gonna do.
Yeah. I like how she strolls into her own party later, like, oh, Jesus. Like, she's just like,
I had to go regulate some food, let them know.
Yeah. She grew on me. It took me a while to warm up to her, but she grew on me. I really liked her. Yeah. All right. So then the episode ends. Geralt of Rivia, he is your destiny. So Cirilla and Geralt both get this message that, they're somehow destined to meet up together. Episode 2, 4 Marks. This is when this is when we get to know Yennefer.
Yeah. And then that one threw me. So and that's her own timeline as well.
Yes.
That's a completely different timeline.
Yes, because by episode 4, I really get the sense that we don't really know how old Yennefer is.
No. We have no idea.
She's been around for decades.
So they have good shea butter in this kingdom.
Yes.
Everybody looks good. Queen Calanth, she's a grandmother, and she fights and eats good. No, nobody ages. Once you become an adult, then it just slows down. I'm guessing the people who look old are about 1,000.
These bitches are aging well for white women, right? Because honestly, she did look her age. She looked in her mid-40s. She could absolutely be a grandmother if she had a kid, right? And her kid had a kid at 18, right? Like that, okay, sure. Whatever. And if you're the ruler, you got to be pumping out these heirs because some motherfucker's going to roll up on you and try to take it. But I think that's the thing is, when it comes to women in age, I'm like, first of all, the witch, you traded that, right? She's going to look that age. They're like in stasis and shit. That's the trade-off.
Good
but
point.
The queen, I'm like, she looked her age, and I buy that she's a grandmother. I think what I loved about that saying that she's a grandmother is that's what the grandmothers look like, right? Like the idea that a grandmother is going to be like driving Miss Daisy is like, that's not what my grandmother looked like. I mean, at some point she did, but like grandmothers can look like that, and they do that, right? Yeah, so I like that part.
Yeah, I would buy her as like mid-40s, maybe.
I got mid-40s as well. Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
But in this, everything feels so old. Like it just feels old. Like everything's been happening in this world for so long. So I'm like, who knows how much time has actually passed? I think that's what confuses me. I feel like a lot of time has passed. Like it could be 50 years, it could be 100 years.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. So we get introduced to some key plot points with Yennefer. So Yennefer is a young girl, lives on a farm. She's born with what in her world is considered a deformity. She is sold, sold by her father for less than the price of a pig. And we later come to find out that she has elven blood. And she has some sort of innate magic, and she's taken in by Tissaia de Vries, the rectress of Aretuza. Now, I have a complaint with the names of things in this series.
I was writing things down phonetically, and then I'd have to pause
I had to put the subtitles on.
the credit. I was just like, my first time hearing Straggle Boy, I wrote down something else altogether. I had to scratch that out and be like, that is wrong.
Not only is it spelled weird, but they all have British accents.
Yep.
Because that's, that's how it is.
That's how you know it's real.
Yeah. So it was, and not only that, but like, I don't know, just some of these names just sound like it's a word that somebody was just like, make it backwards, just use that.
Well, I mean, the author of the book series, right, is a non-English speaker.
Sure.
So, trying to remember, is it Polish?
I think that's right. I want to say that's right. Forgive me for not looking up. Maybe it makes more sense in the original in the original edition.
I knew that the author was I think it's Polish. So that I was like,
yeah, that's a good point. But it was kind of clangy to my ear, some of these names. So Tissaia DeVries is like the foil to Stregobor, right? I assume that they each have their own agendas for what they want to do.
They're two wizards in a tower.
Yes.
One minute, say that again, Ray. What did you say?
They're two opposing wizards in a tower. Where have we seen that before?
Right.
Good point.
That spy on each other.
Yes. Yes. So Yennefer is, she gets kidnapped essentially to go become a sorceress, and she meets Istred. Istred was the guy that she's meeting, right. So she has some clandestine meetings with a guy in a portal, and he is a student in Stregobor's school, and it turns out they're spying on each other, and but we learn a lot about Yennefer's motivations, right? She is an opportunist, and she is clawing her way to the top, and she had it real rough. I don't blame her at all. And she sees an opportunity and she takes it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the hard way that they don't love her. No one loves me and no one's gonna take care of me.
No one around her is trustworthy. No one has ever been a suitable advocate for her or actually generally cared for her since she was a baby. Everybody has treated her like shit. Everybody has abused her. And the thing is she is one shady bitch. And she's crafty. When you think, oh, she's going to fall for whatever, she's like, not today. Not today. So she's an interesting character.
I like that she's so resilient, and she is like, I'm not a victim. I like that about her.
She's like Magnificent of this series, right? This is like, oh, you're the Magnificent. You two are the dueling wizards and towers.
Yeah. And then we get a little interlude with Geralt with the elves, where he and his bard go wandering into the hills.
Can we talk about that bard for a minute?
Yes, let's. I don't even know what his name is. I can't.
I just have down bard as well.
I didn't write it down.
I think it's Jeffrey. It's like a Jeffrey name or something.
So
anyway, bard.
Comic relief. He's the comic relief, right? The fool of the court, or the musician, kind of whatever. Also,
he has a great voice.
Great voice, whatever. Reluctant.
So here's the thing. When I saw them, especially how the character plays on, I'm like, so we're just going to take this straight from the Hercules series.
Yes.
That's with Kevin Sorbo, how every alternating week his friend changed. Because sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not.
Right. But now we know it's because it could be the story takes place over 100-year window. So who knows?
I have to say, though, I'm glad that they went with, this white guy, because so often the comic relief character, they're like, and here's where a black person will show up.
Yep.
Right? And it's, there are obviously major characters along the way that I mean, diversity wise, it's like, I'm not seeing it right now. I'm not seeing in the first 4 episodes an LGBTQIA. The racial dynamics are, I mean, this is a completely fantasy world. Like, who the fuck knows? I mean, it's like there's wizards, there's mages, there's elves. I mean, that seems to be more of a governing system. Although I did get some real racist shit dynamics when it came to like choosing mages for kingdoms. I was like, what's this all about?
Yes.
But yeah, so that's the thing too with the thing is I knew there was going to be a comic relief because even in the video game, like there's always like the Joker, the Jester, the whatever. But I'm kind of glad that they went the way they did, because then it's like, okay, you gave room for these other characters to go in different directions. But even, Gerard, he still can provide sometimes his own comic relief.
Yes, he is that stoic, laconic. He's got good comedic timing.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
Yeah. So the Bard appears kind of in the middle of our timeline, if we're trying to tease apart the timeline, because he's around for the wedding that we see in episode 4 when the queen's daughter is pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Cirilla's only about 12 or 13 years old. So I kind of place him like sort of in the middle of the story.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate that he'll still be around by the time Geralt and Cirilla meet up.
I have no idea which way
12 years is a long time. So, and then they have a little interlude with the elves. Apart from just giving some exposition about what happened to the elves, I didn't really see the point of that scene. Just to show that, what people say about the history of the land is not the reality of the history of the land. It illustrated that pretty well, but then the elves never really. An elf character turns up, but the elves as a group really don't after that.
Well, I think the whole point is like what you said, is to show that the human beings, let's face it, once again, humans ain't shit. And that really, and what they've said is a monster. This is why the monster, and he doesn't, his whole line is, I take care of monsters, and he doesn't really look for the deeper meaning. And what you're seeing is the evolving of that. That he's starting to go like, oh shit, and that takes a little bit. We know that's coming, right? Of this whole judgment thing. And I think part of it is okay, so the monster that you say is a monster, the villain is the hero of his own tale. So I think if anything, again, the whole point of it was only to be so he could have his little moment. And I did like the whole thing about the Bard being good reverse psychology. Oh, slip my throat. Just because you knew they weren't gonna do it. He could have roasted them with his magic at any fucking time, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like he's just playing with them. He's like, let me just give you this time so you can feel good about yourself. Yeah.
I will say this, though, I appreciated it because as someone who was still trying to put the whole world together, I appreciated the background. It gave me context to understand the world. So what it did was, we understand that there's been a horrible genocide,
right?
So it's very corollary of what's happening right here in our own times, like in the Americas or almost anywhere else. Let's just be honest. So we understand that. It also contextualized Queen Calanthe. She's this really badass warrior queen. Mm-hmm. And now we see her situated in the middle of that. So she's been annexing her queendom at the cost of real lives, not just against other kingdoms like Nilfgaard, but she literally annexed her queendom by murdering elves and then changing the history. And so that was important to know. It's also, it helped me kind of contextualize and understanding Yennefer a little bit, because we find out she is of elfin blood, so that makes her even more kind of special and interesting. It's okay, you go back to this. I wonder if they're going to bring it up later, but it's this idea of, assimilation is the way that you survive, or hiding. You hide by, having these little Moses babies out there, sending them up the river. In this case, having a few hybrid babies unintentionally or not, they're the ones who save it all. So that's part of that Moses trope, Moses in Egypt trope.
But look what she did, right? Like the choices that she made, which were completely her physical appearance, her final form, were totally understandable based on. But you know, she saw and other people saw her physical differences from the idealized norm as a punishment.
Yep.
Right, of a blood will out kind of a thing. But she knew how the game was played, and the lengths of which she would go to get there.
I cannot. I needed to pause and I had to.
This was also an unscience moment. I literally had to stop the video and go, I'm sorry, are you going to do a hysterectomy with garden shears?
Was this episode 2 or 3? Was that 2 or 3? I'm trying to remember.
So that was episode 3 when they graduate. Sorry. When they graduate.
Okay. But I think we've said a lot of what to say about this one, setting it up.
Okay, so let's go ahead.
Let's say by this point, by episode 2, well, by episode 1, I was like, there's not enough fucking nudity in this. I want more shirtless Henry Cavill, because let's face it, the wig is whatever. I want your shirt off more. This ratio to shirt time to unshirt time is bullshit. I don't care how the bath time was not enough, and you were covered in like this weird biohazard, whatever. I'm not counting the whole bath. There was not enough shirtless time. I want that argument on the record. I'm done.
Yeah, you know, like, other than some suggestive bad language, this is pretty PG so far. What type of fantasy is this?
Yeah, it is pretty PG so far. So the themes that I'm getting so far is, and this is generally true of society, but it seems really heavy-handed in this series, is that people make most of their decisions based on their inherited social capital.
Yeah.
You know, Geralt has this genetic legacy of being, a mutated gene, but he has this bone deep ability to be a witcher, right? He can't not be a witcher, and that's the only social capital he possesses. So he trades on it, literally, right? That's how he makes his money. Yennefer climbs out of a pig pen into the highest echelons of society based on the social capital of her magical ability. Cirilla, she ends up being linked in destiny to Geralt because of rules about social interactions that her parents, this whole law of surprise business that'll come up later. So this is the theme that I'm getting throughout, is that all of these people are sort of chained to whatever their social capital value is.
Good point.
Mm-hmm. And even the weakness with the witch is how weak these people really are. Like the Witcher and the witch, they ain't shit, right? Like when it and she goes on a great rant about that. Is that episode 3 or 4?
Where she's in the carriage, where she's ranting about it.
No, when she's on the beach.
Yeah, that's later. That's not this one.
Is that 4 or 3?
I think that was 4.
That was 4.
Is that 4?
That was 4. Okay. All right. So, and then in episode 3, we
But our science, though. When is that 3 that we're talking about the hysterectomy?
Yeah, 3.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So let we're already at a half an hour. So let me go through. There's two things in the last episode. I don't want to dissect the whole plot. But let me just give you the 60-second recap, and then we can dive into like what we want to say about it, our no science, our side eye. So in episode 3 is when we see the Striga. The Striga being like a sort of werewolf, sort of like some kind of like a zombie werewolf sort of thing. That when a woman is buried while she's pregnant and a wolf walks over her grave, the unborn child will grow into this monster that they call the Striga. At the same time that Yennefer and Istredd are graduating from their respective sorcerer schools, right? Their little Hogwarts deal. And then in episode 4, we get the wedding episode, Banquets, Bastards, and Burials, where the law of surprise becomes a big factor. So let's talk about that graduation ceremony and that incantation that was done. Right. So when she graduates, she has the benefit of changing her appearance, right? So that she'll be better received at court. They make their sons perfect. They get a little nip tuck makeover, right? Before being sent off to court.
That's really nice. I appreciate that.
Yes. There was something that confused me though. So in the graduation ceremony, they take their vow or whatever, and then the guy says, you may perform the incantation. So the impression that I got was that the incantation to change them was done at the graduation ceremony. But then what we see Yennefer go through is something very different.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if she had gone to the graduation ceremony, what would have happened? Because I don't think it would have been the like feet up in the stirrups business that happened later on. So I'm very, very curious about that. But Ray, I can tell you.
She missed it. And like when she, encounters Istredd later, he made it sound like you missed graduation, like you missed the boat. Like there's nothing like too bad for you.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was the thing though, is they had to set that up because she was about like they were again is separating all these things so that she would make this decision, right? So this baggage of this hot boyfriend who is duplicitous, and she was duplicitous. Like that's what I loved about them and how surprised he was that he was like, what? And I'm like, really, motherfucker?
Yeah.
But the other thing too with this is that if you looked at all the other witches, none of them went through anywhere near the transformation. In fact, I didn't see any, right? Like she's the one that underwent like a major orthopedic and cosmetic surgery. Everybody else, I was like, yep, that's her, and that's her, and that's her. Like, I don't see. If anything, the incantation was like, you're never going to age. Like her fucking incantation was, you're never going to age. And by the way, we're going to do major reconstructive surgery on your jaw, your back, your,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was, and you knew it was coming, but it was still like, and the timetable works for me. I'm laughing so hard to be like, okay, so let me get this straight. Graduation incantation party. She misses that, breaks up with so-and-so, tells him, fuck you. And then there's still time to undergo major not magical cosmetic surgery, outpatient, and then get to the party. How long is this fucking party?
That party was 2 nights because I was under the impression it was an overnight thing. She had to recuperate. And I was like, wait, the party's still going. Party's still going. Keep the party going, I guess.
Yeah, it was a long time.
What is going on here? And so
but time doesn't mean anything in this world. Time is weird. Okay.
Time it's fluid. I don't know, but the thing too, science-wise, I'm like, okay, there has to be a trade-off. Yeah, fertility, sure, whatever. But I'm laughing because I'm like, are those pruning shears? What is?
It was horrible. He had tetanus and gangrene.
Yes.
And an infection.
Yes.
And then you see the uterus and I'm like, not with those pruning shears, friend.
And then he was like, well, I need the herbs. And she's like, I don't need them. And I just want to be like, hold up. Yes, you do, sis. You need the herbs.
She pulled a straight Rocky move, right? When he's like, just let him get hit so the pain will make him stronger. Like that, again, that kind of trope of when they don't take the pain meds, when they intentionally let themselves get beat so that the pain like motivates them. I'm like, okay, I see what you're doing. But I literally I like paused it and I'm like, those are pruning shears.
I literally winced. I couldn't watch it. I was triggered about that entire scene triggered me.
I feel like maybe that was just an oversight with props that day. Like they show up on set and they're like, well, what am I supposed to do this with? They send an intern outside, grab the first thing he sees off the back of the golf cart for the maintenance guy. Comes back in. Make it work.
I'm just glad she didn't bleed to death. Like I'm just like I love this is like wow. But
it was blood everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
But like, I just think like that whole, but the timeline too, I was like, even the best surgeon, and you only have one.
Right, but it's
I mean,
magical, right? It's
yes.
magical. It's just,
But it's not magical because it's like, but you need a pruning shear. Like that, the mix of that was really crazy to me because I'm like, so you need to physically rip this out of her. You can't just be like, oh,
This is a next level. She had some major work. It's like, we had to go to work on you, babe. You had a little bit more going on.
But she did have a dope ass dress. That's
Yeah. Oh yes.
And fly hair. That's the other thing is, did in this incantation did it include a deep condition because the hair looked much better than it did before.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Like, she gets remade via a no anesthesia, no analgesic hysterectomy with horrible, clunky, rusty tools.
Yes. Yes.
But the pure spite and the fact that victory was so close, like that's what I'm thinking, right? But also, can we talk about too her fine ass boyfriend, even though he ain't shit? I'm glad that she got a little bit of go for it, girl, and then she rolled on out of there.
Right.
She did.
Right.
I like that.
So this episode was an episode about transformations, right? Because at the same time that this is going on, we see Geralt battling the Striga, and the Striga is horrific to look at, right? So the whole deal is he has to battle her until dawn, keep her out of her
Crypt
lair, right?
Yeah.
Until dawn, and then she'll come back to the way that she was, and she almost killed him.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was just a little girl, and she jumped up and bit him. No, I mean in her human form.
Oh, yeah.
Like after everything was said and done, she almost killed him.
Yeah.
So it's all about transformations. These two women, one of them who is rejecting the way that she was born naturally in order to look different. Another one who was going back to her natural form. Right? And it's the whole idea that it's like one of them was a monster and is becoming human. The other one was a human who is becoming monstrous. Right? So Yennefer is like becoming this cold, distant, shut off, evil person.
Yeah.
Capable of really, really bad stuff. I really thought that this was setting her up to be Geralt's nemesis.
That's a good point. Yeah. I didn't know. I'm still lost at this point.
I guess I don't see it quite that way because we still have the top of episode 4. I think that I think it's interesting, right? You had these metamorphoses go on, and if anything, I would think that Yennefer becomes more human because humans ain't shit in this series.
Yeah.
The humans are shit in this series. Maybe that little 12-year-old, 13-year-old princess, but who knows? She's not an adult yet.
We don't know yet.
As naive as she was, like, where did she think the fucking elves went? But, like, everybody around her, the machinations, the horribleness, like, the humans ain't shit in this series. The ones that are, you know, they're so damaged. The witches are whatever they are, like, and that's what cracks me up, though, is, like, is she becoming more villainous or is she becoming more human? Was she more human before? Like, yeah. I think that she's a really interesting character. And who's really set up as the hero, right? Because I think it's problematic, too. Even though I like the Queen's thing, I'm like, you are awful.
She's awful.
Like, once you find out, but like in the weird person-to-person dynamics, her way of like being like, fuck the patriarchy, but I'm like, but you're also like Queen Victoria. You a colonizer, you a genocider, like, you know, it's like a weird dynamic. There's so many trashy human beings around. Yeah, and then you have this one, like, she's supposed to be better when she's human. And Geralt, like, tells him, that ain't it. She spent her entire life, I'm trying to remember the exact phrase because it was really interesting. Hungry and enraged, something like that. There was some kind of mix of those words. And then when you see all that goes on, it's like, how's that really different the manifestation of that
It's nice.
in how the colonizers, this queen, and the people who invaded her own country, who are even worse than her, or they're set up to be worse
The
than her.
Nilfgaardian, yeah.
And she had an opportunity to
Hungry and
stave that
enraged.
off.
Yeah.
We find out in the wedding episode that she had an opportunity to marry her daughter off to the Nilfgaardian prince, and she spit in his face. She was just like, and they ultimately were the undoing of her kingdom.
And so there's always a payback.
Yeah, so it's a couple things. So her kingdom is Cintra. So one of the other little things we learned about, I think, in this same episode is that Cintra is averse to magical, assigned magical courtesans. She has a magical courtesan, but he's not assigned to her. Like that comes about organically. So they're anti, this teacher, the Hogwarts assignment, internship, job placement program.
The
job placement program. So they're averse to it. The other thing that I'm glad I watched it again to check out there's two timelines going on. What's happening with Yennefer in graduation, the traumatic graduation, and what's happening in Geralt fighting the Striga. Two different timelines. There's at least 25, 30 years between those two.
Yes.
And their hint is the tiniest sliver of a hint. You can barely catch it. But that was important because I was thinking, because of the cinematography and the plot, I was thinking these things were happening at the same time because they played the Battle of the Striga against the Battle of the Yennefer getting transformed. And they both were having this dawn moment. That's why I think it went overnight because they set it up like she had surgery overnight and there was this dawning where she
you're right.
better. And so when she shows up to the same party, they're still going at night. I'm just like, so y'all just party all night and all day and all night again.
It's like a fraternity party.
Yeah.
Which is true.
But I think, I wonder if it's too, it's like we see, right? This is very heavy, like you said, Lolly, it's very heavy-handed on some of its like, hey, don't miss this major life lesson. And I think another one is ain't none of this shit new. Ain't nothing new under the sun. Humans ain't shit. They ain't ever been shit. Like this metamorphosis or change or who's the real monster, or are we a monster now? Do we become them? Like we're seeing the same cycles, right? Over and over and over again, and people don't learn.
Right.
So they learn it again. Like there's a redundancy in the system, and part of it's a weird way. It's part of, again, when we come up to this like the call of destiny, where it's like, again, if you don't learn, you're going to get another opportunity, like that kind of cycle thinking. And you see that in these timelines of like, ooh, man, you're going to see this again. Like you're seeing this redundancy into it. So but it's very heavy handed. Like you said, Lolly, you're like, okay, we get it.
Yeah.
All right, are we ready for chapter 4?
Episode 4. So episode 4 of Banquets, Bastards, and Burials. This is where the law of surprise. So this is where I really figured out that this is happening far back in the past, because we have Queen Calanthe and her daughter, and then her daughter ends up being pregnant with Cirilla.
Another bad wig, by the way.
They all were bad.
Very, very bad.
Okay,
terrible,
sorry.
Terrible.
Sorry.
No, all the wigs were terrible. And so that I can't remember the daughter's name, Calanthe's daughter, but she
I have it. It's is it Pavetta?
Pavetta. You're right. It's Pavetta.
Yeah.
And she wants to marry the hedgehog guy.
Yeah.
And
they fall in love on their own.
On their own.
On their own. They find each other and fall in love.
I feel like that had to be, when I saw that, I was like, that has to be some kind of callback, because can you think of a less like a less imposing, less terrifying animal than a hedgehog? Like, just wow. Okay. Like a monster, but like not even a scary one. Like just a ridiculous one. Yeah.
So they're Beauty and the Beast, but yet the Beast is not an asshole.
No.
Or right. Or creepy.
No,
and Yeah.
So,
So I have I don't know if mine's a no science or not. I'm confused. So like he when they tell their love story, he explains that she wakes up in his arm. But then when they have their magic floating in the air, and I was like, did she get pregnant from the magic, or did they actually spend the night and get pregnant? Like I feel like they make it sound like she just magically got pregnant, like from the incantation floating in the sky.
no,
I don't know if that can happen. Who knows?
I think she knew that she was pregnant,
Yeah.
and that's why she didn't want to get married.
Oh, that's why she was looking at all those suitors. But it just happened like after that. But it was just like, was the kiss that made her pregnant in this weird kingdom? Like, hey, babies can randomly start growing from wolves walking over graves. I mean,
well, no, we know why that one happened, right? Like, there, you can't have a fantasy series about
incest. In the womb after years. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Well,
from curses, and that's why I'm just like, who? Maybe they have to do it. Who knows?
Yeah, no. I think she knew she was pregnant.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so they had met before.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I knew that, but I was just first like.
What I love though is that was another thing, like logistical thing. I'm like, but how'd you do that? Like, this is the most should have been one of the most guarded people in that place.
And you look like a hedgehog.
So
listen, if we learn nothing from preachers' kids, cops' kids, teachers' kids, they find a way.
And so that's the thing, is the queen either greatly underestimated her, but she also had a couple people on her. And this is not a person who can sneak around. Like, I was just like, she's a shady bitch.
Like, they all shady in their family.
Yeah.
So, by the law of surprise, he had, I can't remember. So he claimed his bride by the law of surprise?
Yes.
So he claimed his bride by the law of surprise, some ancient tradition in this kingdom where everybody's really superstitious and anybody just says law of surprise and you're like, all right, whatever, give him whatever he wants. And then Geralt of Rivia claims the law of surprise, but as a throwaway, right? He doesn't really mean it.
But no, I want to say that the law of surprise is only invoked if you save someone.
Yes.
So her father, he saved him, so he was able to claim the law of surprise. It's not just like anybody can be like, I claim the law of surprise.
You spotted me $5 when I needed it the most.
Law of surprise.
Right.
Yeah.
So he saved his life, and then Geralt saved the Hedgehog Prince's life, and
she immediately vomits in the middle of the night. Like, listen, I'm like, oh.
Morning sickness hits when it hits. You can control it.
It was a pretty exciting time. Like, a lot of stuff went down. I'm surprised she didn't throw up earlier. Like, I would have threw up the minute I fell out the sky from being floating up there. That's when I
love. My favorite though is like the range of emotions. How pissed the Witcher looked. How the queen was like, motherfucker. Like, and the Witcher's like, I'm out.
Yep. He was like, I meant give me a puppy.
I mean,
you ain't got nothing else coming? That can't be the only thing you got coming up.
Because I think the thing is too, is like, he doesn't even believe in the law of surprise, which is why he claimed it. Right. And then when that happened, he was like, son of a bitch.
And the queen was just like, I hate everybody.
Yep.
Oh, one thing I do want to bring up on that is like an issue that you see for me. I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but the human beings and everybody around are always like, the Witchers don't feel emotion. What? It must be nice. Everyone's like, must be nice. And I'm like, number one, he's all with the emotions. And I'm like, first of all, if you're not feeling pleasure, which he seems to be getting jiggy with it on a fairly regular basis, and not just because he's bored, whatever. So he feels pleasure in some way, I hope, but he's not just doing it because he's like, I don't have any monsters to kill. I don't know. But he feels pleasure, that's clear. He certainly feels irritation. So I'm like, what are you talking? Like, that was like a real sticking point to me, because I'm like, emotion, emoting, brooding, like, what?
Yeah, I think that's just the mythology, right? It's just the mythology of the Witcher. And it's a way to dehumanize them, right? To make to make them even further outside of society, that they can't feel, they can't have relationships, they can't love, they don't care, like,
But I think
that they're
also
just machines.
It's the confusion, right, of control with not having emotions, because these humans ain't shit, right? They're like setting people to assassinate their spouses and like, you gotta die, and like and she starts a World War III because she's like, get the fuck out. Like, and I'm just like, so your drama. It's like watching Real Housewives of Atlanta. And when someone's like, she just is like a robot, I'm like, no, it's because you're here and she's normal. Right.
Right. So yeah, that's just I just chalk that up to the legend of The Witcher. Okay. All right. So now we're at the end. So we're at the end of episode 4. So there was only one thing. There was so much going on. There's, it's fantasy. So trying to make sense of the science, even the internal science within the world. I don't feel like we get to see enough of it to really draw any conclusions.
I agree.
But I had one side-eye moment. I had one real hard side-eye moment when I was just like, come on. When he is fighting the Striga, and he's got her on the ropes, and he pulls out his little wolf brass knuckles. So, yeah, brass knuckles with little wolves on them. I thought when I saw the camera zoom in on that, I'm like, is he gonna like punch her and then we're gonna see like little wolf imprints on her face? Like, what? I was just
it's like, silver, right? Because I thought it was like, it had to be silver.
Yeah, no, it's silver, but does it have to be wolves?
Yeah.
Hey, he is on brand 24/7.
He's on his old school 70s.
Yeah, I mean, they call him the White Wolf. Like, I get it, but I was just like,
he's like a Kardashian in that bitch. I'm on brand.
he reminded me of that like early 30s dude who still follows Godsmack on tour and wears like rings on all of his fingers and like has all the leather bracelets, like.
Let us pray. We don't know who's the costumer for this. I bet that's who they are.
Who is the wig person? Because and is it the same one from Aquaman? That continues to be my question.
Obviously, it must be.
But
that was my only one.
In this episode, I think Yennefer is the we only kind of see, and I kind of see shades of this character of like Viola Davis's character and How to Get Away with Murder, where you're like, am I cheering for this person? Am I not? She's horrible, but I like her. Like that anti-hero that you usually is reserved for male characters.
Yeah.
They get to be complicated. Women don't get to be complicated. And, the queen dies, and the queen, of course, turns out to not be shit.
But I feel like she's another one you like, but then you find out more details. Again, another complicated character. Yeah.
Right? And so Yennefer's whole speech, in before she buries this baby, is when she realizes that what she thought would get her a ticket out has just been trading one level of oppression, one type of prison or pig pen.
Yeah, you're right.
For another that's just more glamorous. Like the whole speech about we're all just vessels and they take and they take and they take. And I was like, damn. Like again, heavy-handed, but I was like, so it's setting her up to be another character where it's this anti-hero kind of like, again, it reminded me of Annalise on How to Get Away with Murder, that you're like, why am I now cheering for this person? Like it's because you see like everyone around her and everyone she was working for and how little is within her control, that she recognizes that, and this thing she thought would be her ticket out is just another prison. And so like that was a damn good speech. I don't know who wrote that part of it, that bit of dialogue about being a vessel and they take, but that chunk was some very fine writing.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right, that is kind of the turning point for her. That's where we see like she has her opportunity, then she has her machinations, and then the realization, like the final like realization of what her reality is and her lowest point.
Mm-hmm. And that's 10 years, right? So you caught that part of the timeline, how long she'd been in service for this person.
I thought it was like 30.
She said she had at least been out there on service for 30 years.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for that one person, but since graduation, 30 years had passed.
Yeah, but for this one, I thought it was about 10, but been out there for a long time. And so she definitely has the perspective of this is all the same. It might look a little bit different. And even in this world, right, even in this fantasy world, where it's the illusion of women have power, it's the illusion of all these things. And you still, even in this fantasy world where we've just seen a very problematic, powerful woman, then you have this other supposed powerful woman who's really not.
Yeah.
Right. And then even with the whole, we kind of skipped over a bit of the cool witch that brought in Gerard to take care of Incest King and his little heir problem. And so she's a really interesting, that witch is going to come back.
Her name is Trismagold.
Yeah, so she's going to come back. She's major in the game. So I'm assuming she's going to show up again. And that was an interesting dynamic because she's the one that hires the Witcher, right, to do all this stuff. And I don't know how long she's been with that family, but she's been with that family at least, because she knew some things, but she didn't know all the stuff. So I'm not sure how long she's been with that kingdom as their mage. But she wasn't in the same class timeline-wise as Yennefer.
No,
so like you're trying to put the timeline.
She had to. She came after Yennefer.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting to see that even within that class of and I don't know, would you call it a class or like
cohort?
This special group of witches or mages, this kind of separate society, but also in service of humans, where they have their own machinations going on, right, and their own kind of movements, and she's trying to within her limited power structure, trying to change the course of this whole kingdom, which is but within very tight confines. So she brings in the Witcher, which could have gotten her in real trouble. Like I'm interested to see like how that all, what is it going to loop back around as?
Yeah.
But it's funny. Okay, so quality of the series. So we're in 4 episodes in.
Yeah.
What are our thoughts overall?
It's a little hit or miss for me.
I agree.
It's a little hit or miss. Right now I'm like at a 6.5.
I agree.
But I'm curious to see, that might go up if certain questions get answered for me. So for instance, so going back to Renfri at the beginning, Renfri was one of the daughters of Lilith. And, again, there's this mythology, so we don't know how much of it is true. But the daughters of Lilith, daughters born under a black sun, so presumably an eclipse, girls born during an eclipse, have these magical manifestations. And people basically set out to kill them because they were terrified of what they would bring. I'm assuming, are we going to find out that Ciri is a daughter of Lilith?
That's what I
was she's born under an eclipse. And then, knowing that the Witchers are male and that they were created. So I'm really curious about the science that created the Witchers. Because they used the word synthetic. And that word seemed very out of place in the context of this series for them to use the word synthetic. So what chemistry or what alchemy, what genetic manipulation did they do? And was it in direct response to this idea of the daughters of Lilith? Like, it makes sense if the daughters of Lilith are all girls, that somebody would get it in their head, like, ooh, maybe we could make some kids just like those. But they had to be boys for some reason.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we'll ever get those questions answered in the series, but I would really like to, because that part really interests me.
So, I'm hanging on because there's so many unanswered questions. So I'm not in it because I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what's next. It's like, shoot, I still don't know what's happening. I got to keep watching to figure stuff out. I mean, I like he's pretty to look at. Like, let's be real.
Oh, yeah.
If they would cast this with anybody else, I wouldn't be watching it. It would have to be someone just as beautiful to look at. If it wasn't for that, this is too staccato and weird for anyone else to check this out.
I like the timeline, but I read a lot of books. Certain authors are known for their non-linear storytelling. I like the challenge of that, of being like, like where's the links and where aren't the links? I think that I'm with you, Lolly. Where I am, and it's as a fantasy show. To me, I don't compare it with Game of Thrones because honestly, is that a positive? But that's up for debate. I'm comparing this show for the entertainment factor, the storytelling factor. I think if anything, like dialogue, it's real hit or miss. There have been some very shining moments, especially for the female characters. There have been some really good bits of dialogue, but they're kind of like sprinkled in. And I think, again, they're heavy-handed. I'd be interested. I think I'm sitting at a 6. To me, it's funny because I'm comparing this more to Spartacus, Blood and Sand, where if you're going to go fucking 100,000%. And I feel like you're either going to try to be like cinematic, like, or you're going to be like, no, balls out, everyone's naked,
walking
in a corner, like vaguely there's a Spartacus, there's plots and matching. It's basically a soap opera, but we're all Spartans, right? So you're either going to go that way or you're going to try to go, quote, the Game of Thrones, like, no, this is serious. And I feel like this show, I'm like, you have to make the call.
No, they
were going to go totally game. You're going to go Game of Thrones or you're going to go fucking balls out, literally and figuratively.
Yeah. It does try to break the genre a little bit.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm like, I don't know, and that I must know if that's a problem on their part or if it's me being like, I wanted it to be more like almost crazier, because I feel like it's like, I know you're not Game of Thrones, and that's not a compliment either, but it's like, but if you're gonna do it, fucking do it, right?
Don't be scared. Do it.
And I don't feel like they're actually, because even some of the nudity things, and I'm joking about the shirt off or something, but I'm literally thinking of Spartacus, where it's like, if you're gonna go, go for it. I feel like they're not quite. They're like, let's hold it back a bit.
No, for this story, they need to not hold back. All right, so in a couple of weeks, we'll be back here to talk about the rest of season 1 for The Witcher. So get caught up online. Come on back for that.
Predictions? Do we want to do predictions since we haven't seen the next 4, or no?
Oh, I've seen bits and pieces, so I'm not.
Okay.
It would be so hard.
It could be anything. I mean, literally. I think kissing.
Yeah, it would be hard to say.
I can tell you right now, though, this little blonde princess, I don't like her.
I'm gonna eat her for free.
I don't.
Free.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't. Not that I hate her. I just am like, am I supposed to care about what happens to this little girl?
I'm not.
It's hard.
I'm interested to see her interaction with Geralt. I'm interested to see what Geralt does with a little kid. Like,
I get. Yeah. But I'm just like, am I supposed to? I don't know. Something about her. I'm just like.
I'm with you. I'm just kind of like, why do we care if she dies?
Yeah, there's not much. There's not much there.
Because she's on the run the whole time, and like the kingdom is falling apart, and she's being a little brat. Like, why are we here? Like, they just passed out suicide potion to everybody, baby. Okay, that's how serious this is.
Yeah.
I liked her. I like the little elf though. It keeps saving her ass. I was like,
you know what? I feel some kind of way. I feel like if you ever like, leave her alone. She don't deserve it.
I know. That's again. He's kind of the magical Negro character in this whole thing. I feel some kind of way about
exactly that. He's magical and Negro.
Yeah, literally. Like I'm just like, why are you saying? Yeah. Like I don't know something about that, but. We got another 4 episodes.
We got 4 more. It could be, I literally, no telling.
If there isn't more shirtless Carvel, I am out. No.
But I
All
think
right, we'll have to see.
it's not enough nudity for this to be fantasy.
There's not.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So on that note, we're gonna leave you guys tonight. Everybody out there, stay home, stay safe, keep a respectful distance. 6
And wash
feet.
your hands all the
Wash
time.
your hands. And stop touching your face.
Ooh, as I just touched my
No.
face.
It's only me. It's only me. Like, I'm social.
Y'all be good and stay safe.
All right, good night.